Couple of housekeeping things. I'm thrilled that Gosh Willen and the Crick Don't Rise. This is going to be one of our last regular virtual meetings. As Steve nods in enthusiastic there. We've talked about that a lot. That's why he and I are smiling. Our hope and goal is that provided the medical winds stay at our back in a good way, and pretty soon we're going to start getting back together on a regular basis. I think there will still be good place and time to use the virtual capabilities, but we know that everybody likes to see each other too. So on that note, 3 things that if you don't have on your calendar, you want to have on your calendar. May 4th, we start the process of getting back together with our new AMM on the Road series, where we get together for 2/3 networking. Some special industry insider will be there for a bit of a short hot take on a key issue to share some insights. But the big thing is to be together, and we're going to be in New York City on the 4th. Idea is that it's kind of towards the end of the day, so you can do the work you need to do there if you're doubling up. Join us for a bit, and we'll still get you out in time that you can get home if home's around. You could get to the airport for a late flight and all of that. Or if you're kind of the AMM roadie, like I turn out to be, you could just hightail it up on the evening of the 4th up to Boston on the 5th, where we'll be celebrating Cinco de Mayo in Boston on Lovejoy Wharf. That should be a neat time too. Quite excited for that and grateful to Steve and Jen Badua, who are leading the charge up that way. The third thing you need to know is Nexus is coming. Nexus is in June, and Nexus is in North Jersey at a wonderful place. I believe that is in Liberty Park, a nice restaurant and event space. The information we'll send out to you and the details are on the website. It's going to be an even bigger celebration this year as we expand the awards that are given. We recognize and just enjoy the fact we're together. And if the winds are at our back, and even though we're recorded, I'll deny I ever said this, maybe, just maybe at the end of the night, I think there will be, as Ben Franklin called, some illuminations, perhaps. I'll leave it to you to figure out if you can decipher that little riddle, because Michelle has sworn me to secrecy, but she's not in the room with me, so whatever.
That sounds like tequila shots. Illumination.
That's during the event, Kevin, and I'll meet you at the bar for that. That's the beauty of my night. I can have a shot with you. Michelle's worried about making sure he's out on time. So that's it. Steve, would you like to add anything? Say hello, do anything like that?
No, I'd just like to thank you, Todd, for your introduction, to welcome everybody to today's session. Really looking forward to hearing from Stephanie on PLD and COVID and more. Stephanie's insights are always incredibly informative. So I'm really glad we could have her back to give some additional information to the AMM community. Very much looking forward to the physical meetings. Do hope everybody will be able to attend at least one of those, if not all of them, if it's all possible. Boston isn't a bad place. You're definitely welcome up here, anybody. So Jen and I will give you a great welcome. So hope to see you up here.
That was good.
Without further ado, over to you, Todd.
So Stephanie Hanaway is a name that I don't think needs an introduction. And if you've been involved with the AMM, you know her well because, well, she's a past president, and I'm pretty sure every other title, position, volunteer role you could potentially have in the organization, she's probably had. Where I'm the most excited is around COVID. She ended up with a few extra hours in her day, and I said, I have a plan for those hours. What if we start this series where we go back to the community and do some research? Not the stuff that's got P-scores and regression analysis, but just talk and hear and start to help us all know a little bit better what we're each doing and help lift up our processes. And that's where the AMM Conversations Special Report Series has started. And at least to this kid, it's been a hell of a collaboration and a fun ride to keep putting these out. And today we pause to talk about what we've learned and hopefully talk a little bit amongst ourselves about where you'd like to see it go. It's 8 after. I've talked too long already. Stephanie, the floor is yours.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for teeing that up, Todd. One of the things with this project that, to kind of put things in perspective, COVID was raging at the time. Todd and Jamie and I had Jamie Brewster, which I don't think Jamie's on this call. I think she might be joining, but I don't think she's on here now. But we were all kind of brainstorming about what we might be able to do as far as research. What we landed on through this brainstorming is more of a project where at the time we'd lost our in-person meetings. So during our in-person meetings, as you know, we would all talk to each other. So over coffee, pull-asides, you know, at the corner of the room, basically saying, what are you guys doing about this? What do you think about this thing that's coming up? Or how are you handling it? And kind of get some insight from each other. One of the limitations, of course, to that was that you only know the people you're talking to. And it's like, well, what does everybody else think? So that kind of blossomed into this project. I'm going to go ahead and start my slides. And some of this, let's see, screen share. Let's see if I can share the right screen here. There it is. Share that one. All right. So basically what I've done here is we've had conversations on, I believe it's 9 topics now. And I call them conversations because while it comes in the form of a survey, what we're really trying to focus on is what are people thinking? What are they saying, etc. So I am going to see if I can minimize this so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, so topic of the conversation. We've looked at physician level data. We've looked at impacts of COVID with sales calls, budgets, more and more. So here is just some highlights of what we've learned. I already said this is kind of like the coffee conversations we've had at AMM meetings. So as Jamie Brewster pointed out, we need to make sure everybody understands this is not research. It's not projectable to an entire industry, but it does give you an idea of what people are saying and how they're thinking. So once again, we're focusing on what people are saying. We want to hear what our colleagues and clients are thinking, which was easier when we had in-person meetings, which we don't now, but you're still limited by who was able to come to that meeting. The data, there is data in these reports. It's more like a show of hands. So I think of it as if we are all gathered together at an in-person meeting and the speaker says, by a show of hands, how many in this room are utilizing programmatic advertising? You see how many people raise their hands. So that's kind of what the data is there to show you. And I want to give special shout out thanks. I already mentioned Jamie. Jamie Brewster at Kantar. She reviews every survey that I draft, and she's really good at this. So she has usually some really good ideas about how to phrase things, how to order responses, etc. She also reviews every report that I draft to make sure that I stay unbiased in what I've written. So I obviously, like all of you, I have my own personal feelings about things, and Jamie makes sure that my personal feelings don't leak into how I'm writing up what I'm hearing. So with that said, here's the topics that we've covered so far, and I'm going to get into today. We've done matchless targeting and physician level data. That was the first one we did. It was probably the hottest topic at the time. We've looked at content marketing. We've looked at programmatic advertising, which really kind of ties into the first topic. We looked at the death of third-party cookies. Many of you said you were curious what people think and how they're reacting to that. Probably one of our most popular topics is exploring what print's place is now in 21st century medical media. Great response from both agencies and publishers on that one. In-person sales calls. We were all in the midst of COVID. What do people think is going to be the future for in-person versus just virtual meetings between reps and clients and our agencies once COVID's over? Then we looked at budgets and how did people do in 2021, 2020, how they think they're going to do in 2022, and what does the future look like? And finally, many of you haven't seen this yet. It's not yet up on the website. We just completed a survey on digital ad fraud in medical media. So let's just dig in. I'm just going to kind of go through some of the highlights, show a few of the comments. I do want to emphasize, though, that me pulling out a couple of comments or saying, here's kind of what I took from reading what everybody had to say, may be different from what you take away. It's like everybody has their own perspective. So I really encourage everyone, if you haven't, or if you have more questions or want to even get some more of the hand raised data, which isn't all in here, to just read through the reports. I think they're kind of fun. So first topic, match list targeting. So this is the how many said what. This is what you'll see in data charts. So when asked how many of the publishers in this room are offering match list targeting with physician level data, this is all digital, half of the people raised their hand. They were almost all commercial publishers. Only one association publisher in this survey said they offer physician level data and they only do it for some of their titles, not for all of their titles. And of the 18 agency participants, 17 out of 18 said they use match list targeting and digital advertising, and all of them do require physician level data along with that. So looking at some of this data and the comments, here's some of the takeaways I have. Match list targeting without physician level data isn't really a thing. They kind of go together. I myself was curious about that, but they go together, they're married. So physician level data, then, as I think we mostly know, it's an insurmountable privacy challenge for most association publishers. At least one in this conversation is able to do that with, I'm guessing, one of their non-clinical publications, but it's something most association publishers can't get beyond. Some commercial publishers, I was almost surprised to find out, it's even problematic for some of them, not all, but some say they can't do match list targeting, they can't provide physician level data, even on the commercial side. One of the comments in here questioned whether physician level data even exists in business to business. I know we sometimes hear that this isn't consumer marketing, it's different. Doctors are used to being tracked. But one person mentioned that in business to business, normally you'll ask people to fill out a form to download a white paper or whatever. So they question whether customer level data is being provided in business to business. I don't know the answer to that. Some do question profitability. So whether they've decided to do this or not, they question whether with such small lists, this is hard to scale. There's a lot of administrative complexity that tends to come up. That said, some association publishers, even though it may not be as profitable and there definitely are privacy challenges, they do wish they could offer it. They know it costs them money and they hate saying no. And if they could figure out a way to do this and still protect their physician's privacy in some way, they would do that. Now, that said, publishers that do offer match list targeting, and they were almost all commercial publishers and physician level data, they're pretty adamant that it is profitable for them and it is important, they think, to their ability to actually serve advertisers in the right way. So just a few of the comments, and in these reports, there are sometimes 30, 40, 50, 60 comments. So I've just pulled out a few to make some of these, oh, I'm sorry, I actually weren't to the comments yet. These are some more takeaways. This set is from the agency side. So yes, most all agencies are using match list targeting and they require physician level data. But not all agency clients or campaigns require it. So this is why I'm sure publishers that don't provide physician level data are still getting campaigns, because not all clients, not all campaigns require it. And one mentioned that they have clients that prohibit this kind of thing. So agency, at least one agency even said it does add a lot of complexity and it's hard to scale for us too. One agency also mentioned that we did ask them about, how do you measure ROI? Are you really getting script lift? One or two or more agencies said, we don't really know about script lift because our clients aren't sharing that with us. I don't know if that's true for every agency, but the ones that answered the question, it was true for them. So they don't really know. One question that we asked in here is, how do you charge for this? And we asked agencies, what do you pay for this? There is no standard CPM model. I remember years ago, people talking about it's $400 CPMs, or it's four times whatever you charge for run of site, but that's not true. Ranges ranged from a 10% premium on standard CPM all the way to 1,000% premium. So it's just all across the board, and it differs by campaign and publisher. Another thing that I found really interesting is physician level data. I'd always question this. Agencies and their clients are using it for more than just performance measurement. So they do use it for retargeting across other media. I think some of us always wondered about that. It may inform other non-personal promotion efforts that are being undertaken, and it might inform their subsequent sales and marketing efforts. What exactly that means on a nitty-gritty basis, I'm not sure. I don't know if it means that they can pass information on to their sales staff to make a personal call once they see this data come up that they've engaged with an advertisement. Don't know what that means, but it is being used for more than just performance. Both publishers and agencies do expect that future privacy legislation might impact what they're doing. Okay, so here's just a few of the sample comments. So one agency says, yeah, our clients require physician level data because it is the best way to tell if a campaign is working. That makes perfect sense. One of the publishers in here said, as an association, we must protect member privacy. Now, more than one publisher said that. A lot of publishers said that in one way or another. That's just, that person was particularly adamant about it. Now, here's the agency, one of the agencies that was talking about how physician level data is so valuable because it can be tied to a holistic marketing effort. That's more than just tracking. And then one publisher on the same vein said, who knows what the marketers are doing with these doctors? So I think there's obviously some anxiety about what's happening with this data once it leaves the publisher. But on the other hand, another publisher said, it is crucial that physician level data be offered for all tactics. This is one of the examples of publishers who do offer this and say it works for them and it's really important, we have to do it. Okay, so the primary takeaway, I think, from the discussion with agencies and publishers are perspectives differ. We may have known this, but there is no golden answer. I think when you read the reports, you can see that you're going to see yourself in there and you're going to see the other side in there. So I really encourage people to look at both the agency and the publisher report. This is one of the few reports that we did split out the reporting among agencies and publishers into two separate reports. Okay, let's move on. Content sponsorship in medical media. How many said what? Well, this is just the data. Raising their hands, all 19 publishers, and these were both association and commercial publishers, say they do accept content sponsorships in at least one form. So we were looking at, and we asked people specifically, how about display advertising that takes a narrative editorial type form? I think many publishers call those advertorials. Then there's also content that was created by either the funder or the sponsor, not by the journal or media outlet itself. Then there's original content that publishers create and publish on behalf of the sponsor, or there's existing content that's theirs that they repackage and then distribute on behalf of a sponsor. So it's kind of all across the board. Now, I will say only commercial publishers in this survey raised their hand to say they will create original content for a sponsor, have their editors actually create that content. That was only one. Most association publishers were sticking to the content that's provided almost as an advertisement, but it looks like content. All agency participants said they do buy this. They're buying, and all 8 said they buy unbranded for disease state and branded. So there's our hand raise. So some of the takeaways, the comments revealed, we talked about this on the previous slide. Content sponsorship can mean many things. So it was, I think it became really evident at first that when we said, do you accept content sponsorships, we had to be real specific about what that means, because it means a lot of different things. Agencies advise publishers, don't go in, please, with, we can do whatever you want. Agencies don't like that. They want to be given clear direction by publishers on what publishers can do, what they recommend doing, what works best on their website, etc. Commercial publishers are the ones that are more likely to offer that full menu of sponsorship types, including writing, creating original content for a sponsor. For association society publishers, as you might expect, reputation is the biggest concern. They don't want to be seen as being a shill for a pharma company. So that's the thing that keeps them up at night. Now, this is interesting. Some publishers commented that we're kind of surprised that there's not more demand for content sponsorships, but other publishers said this is where the real money is being spent. So different experiences, different opinions, possibly different specialties, who knows. Both sides said, and particularly agencies, warn publishers who get into this that this is going to require a lot of close collaboration between many stakeholders, including MLR. So expect that deadlines are going to be missed, expect really long lead times and delays, and just try to be flexible with that. And on content sponsorships, performance-based pricing is the norm, not universal, but it's mostly a cost per engagement model. So a couple of the comments, one publisher said, we don't accept content sponsorships or sponsored content, period. That was actually probably the exception to the rule, because most others do accept some type. An agency said, content sponsorships perform well compared to general awareness tactics. Another publisher said, the content that is created by the sponsor is fine because we just make sure it's clear to the reader that it's just another form of advertising. We talked about that a minute ago. Now, here's another agency that's saying something a little bit different from the previous agency. This agency says there's not a lot of accountability or understanding of how effective it really is. So once again, agencies don't necessarily have the same experiences as other agencies. Primary takeaway here, opinions differ on the effectiveness, ethics, and return on investments regarding content sponsorships. So here's another place where the reports are going to be helpful. Okay, getting into programmatic advertising, trying to be more in general with programmatic. 5 of the 15 publisher participants said they sell online advertising in programmatically. So 2/3 don't, but 5 out of 15 do. And all but one of those publishers who do sell programmatically also provides physician level data. All 10 of those who don't sell programmatically cite privacy. They also cite other concerns, but it's mostly privacy, universally with those who have stayed away from programmatic. Only 2 agencies participated in this discussion. It's probably not as hot a topic for them as it is for, I think, some publishers, because it's just a way of doing business. The 2 agencies both buy programmatic, and they both use programmatic direct. They both use private exchange. They both use real-time bidding, but neither use header bidding. So most of the options for programmatic they're using. Okay, some of the comments. Taken in general, programmatic advertising in medical media is not just about automation. I think years ago, and that probably ship sailed a long time ago, was about how much more convenient it is than paper insertion orders and all that. It's not about automation anymore. It's really all about targeting and physician level reporting. Privacy, like we saw in the first survey, is the primary concern, because now we are talking about physician level reporting. Even when publishers know it costs them money, they just can't go there because of privacy. Publishers who do sell programmatic stand firmly by it. We saw that in the first survey, so that's stood true in this survey as well. Most publishers, when it comes to selling their inventory through ad networks or the open exchange, most do not do it. Those that do are quite happy with the arrangement. I think only one publisher said they actually make inventory available on the open exchange. Some do use premium ad networks, probably like eHealthcare Solutions, and those that do are very, very happy with the way it's working for them. Agencies buy programmatically. Of course, this is based on 2 agencies, but they are buying for all types of targeting. So it's not just HCP level. They're buying specialty targeting, demographic, geographic, behavioral, retargeting. They're buying programmatic retargeting, and they're even buying lookalike audiences. So it's being used for a lot of things that maybe not us as publishers are involved with, but it's being used. Okay, one publisher said, as we've thought, advertiser demand isn't just for automation, it's all about targeting and physician level data. I'm sorry, HCP level data. One agency said, publishers need to get more clarity on their audience targeting and inventory. Now, it was unclear whether they were talking about all publishers, whether selling programmatic or not, or even those who sell programmatically need to get more clarity on what it is they're selling. Good takeaway there, I think. One publisher said, this is a publisher that sells programmatically. Selling programmatically allows us to provide clients with integrated omni-channel solutions. So, as I said, they stand firmly by it, and it's working very well for them. An agency said that buys on exchanges, it provides positive outcomes for their clients. So agencies are buying on the exchange, and they think it's working for them. Another publisher said, basically, this really comes down to privacy policies. I'm also not confident, though, that it would provide the return on investment that we currently enjoy. So people are still concerned about these small lists and how much money they're going to be able to make. So the primary takeaway here, I think, was programmatic does mean PLD, in case there was any question about that. Also, opinions differ. Those who do it, it works for them. Those who don't do it have very good reasons for it, and more information is in the report. Okay, then we looked at the demise of third-party cookies. So here's the hand raises. Now, here's one note I want to make. This was interesting. This questionnaire went out on June 17th, 2021. At that moment, Chrome was expected to start blocking third-party cookies 6 months later, beginning in 2022. It was 7 days after this questionnaire went out that Google announced that they were delaying their implementation from 2022 to, I think it's late 2023 now. So just so everyone knows, the responses weren't based on this still being out in the future. I think people were assuming this was right around the corner when they filled out when they provided their comments and answered the questions. So just a little bit of background there. So among these, 10 out of the 15 publisher participants said they do use third-party cookies to serve as advertising. So cited were both advertiser cookies and implementing third-party cookies for authentication and or retargeting. That doesn't mean they're using it for both, but they're using third-party cookies for some purpose. 6 out of those 10 who use third-party cookies know that their organization is currently pursuing cookie alternatives like, Flock, Unified ID 2.0, et cetera. 4 of them just didn't know. They said, I'm not sure, or I don't know. Possibly we've got, we probably do have a lot of sales reps who are answering these surveys and participating. So they just didn't know what their organization is going to do about it. At least they didn't at the time. Okay, some of the takeaways from the comments. Interestingly, not many people seemed all that troubled by the forthcoming demise of the third-party cookie in Chrome. And this went for both agencies and publishers. Many publishers actually considered it a positive. So as we might expect, I think publishers, some are hoping that it means fewer dollars will be diverted to non-endemic sites, and they won't be under such pressure to sacrifice their members or their readers' privacy. Now, some publishers also hope to think that match list targeting will decline when cookies stop, but agencies are still going to expect publishers to just simply replace third-party cookies with first-party data. So long story short, whatever happens to cookies, targeting is still going to be expected. So one publisher had said this is good news for publishers with first-party data. And it's all about first-party data now. An agency says we're going to need to leverage more direct partnerships with suppliers who use first-party data. Another publisher says this is a good thing. Publishers make the investments to deliver a really hard to reach audience, only to have that audience taken away for cheap retargeting elsewhere. So this is one publisher who's hoping the world gets better once third-party cookies are go away by Google. An agency then says, however, once again, this is going to cause fairly minimal disruption. Most publishers will have alternatives ready. So the primary takeaway is targeting is still going to be expected. First-party data will reign supreme, but most people right now, at least on the agency side and the publisher side who are implementing third-party cookies and providing this kind of targeting, don't expect it to just magically go away. They're thinking it's going to continue, but with using different technology and primarily using first-party data. So we shall see how that pans out. Okay, print's place in 21st century media. I will say this was one of the most popular topics that we surveyed people on, got a really good response. And I personally was surprised at some of the findings here. So how many said what? This was mostly about opinions about print, so we don't have a lot of data, but for 17 out of the 25 publisher participants, print still is more than half of their revenue. For many, it was more than 75% of their revenue. However, for the majority of publishers, even those publishers and agencies, fewer than half of their clients include print at all. So now some publishers said more than 75% of our clients do include print, but mostly it was 50% or less. However, print is still the majority of their revenue. So print is still valuable from a revenue standpoint, at least. So the comments revealed, and this is what I thought was most interesting, both agencies and publishers agree on print's value. Honestly, I don't think there was one comment in here that said nobody reads print anymore. It was universal that print is both valuable for branding, its reach. Print is wonderful for awareness. Credibility cannot be questioned, and its influence has not waned. So I was expecting to see a lot of print is dead comments in here, and I don't think there are any. There may have been one, but if there was, it didn't make too big of an impact compared to all the other comments. In fact, when we talked about print and asked people what are the limitations of print, they were all utilitarian. So it was all about measurement and tracking and being able to adjust an advertisement on the fly. The limitations of print were not cited even by agencies as being print is not impactful anymore. It's just, it doesn't work for a lot of what campaigns want to do. Some agencies and even publishers cited the long lead times required for print. Sometimes it's just difficult to get your act together. It's hard to swap out creative and when something changes. So that was also one of the limitations of print. But once again, it's a utilitarian thing. It's not an impact thing. Now, there were some, a lot of people in here said print is essential to any campaign. There were several people that said they consider it more of a supplementary tactic, and this was both among agencies and publishers, quite frankly. But long story short, print is here to stay, and nobody thinks it's not. So I thought that was really, really interesting. Some of the comments, one agency said, with print, the vehicle itself screams authoritative information. It's a different read versus digital. One publisher said, print offers greater reach, more effective storytelling, more impact, and more time spent with the ad. One agency said, print's major limitation is that we cannot track engagements. We had just talked about that. I'm going to start hustling through these because got a few more to go. A publisher said, once again, the biggest challenge we hear is the lack of ability to measure print's impact. Reach and influence aren't the issue. And that means they're hearing that from agencies. It's not a matter of reach and influence. Another agency said, print is still the most cost-efficient way of reaching the most healthcare professionals. So the primary takeaway, agencies and publishers both agree on the enduring value of print. So if you like print and you want to have a good day, I recommend reading all the comments in this report. Okay, another very popular topic. What's going to happen to in-person meetings once COVID is over? COVID is waning now, but when this survey was done, it was back in October, 23 out of the 32 participants were still working fully remotely. I'm sure that's changed by now. Slightly more than half were doing in-person sales calls, but it was very infrequent. So it was really the exception to the rule as of last October. When they raised their hand and said, what do you prefer? 7 out of 9 of the agency participants said they prefer virtual meetings, but they like virtual meetings when they're conducted from a remote location, like from their home. 13 out of the 20 publisher participants say they, in general, prefer in-person meetings. And interestingly, when given a choice, 0 out of the 29 total participants name as their #1 choice doing virtual meetings while they're in the office. It's either virtual meetings from home or it's in-person meetings. So the comments revealed some of the same takeaways. Virtual meetings while at home are popular. If they're conducted in the office, that's a different matter. 0 people, as I said, prefer virtual meetings in the office. Agencies and publishers both agree that virtual meetings provide convenience, time saving, and lower travel cost. But agencies and publishers also agree that communications are challenged when meetings go virtual. So I would say our media professionals we asked and agency executives agreed that it's hard to maintain attention when you're on a virtual meeting. It's hard to read nonverbal signals. One agency executive said they're actually training their staff to try to read nonverbals while on a virtual call. So I thought that was pretty fascinating. They see that as one of the limitations of being virtual. Maintaining that personal connection, of course, everyone agrees is tough. Now, when we get down to it, agencies do prefer virtual meetings for routine encounters, and publishers still lean more toward in-person. But everyone pretty much agrees that even once COVID is long over, in-person is going to probably be reserved for important meetings, and routine meetings are going to be virtual. Their comments do indicate too that a hybrid future isn't necessarily going to be easy. It was easier when everybody was working at home or virtually, but when some are in the office and some are remote, there are technology problems, there are finding the right rooms, there's noise if someone's trying to do a virtual meeting from a cubicle. So it's not necessarily going to be easy, but it's going to happen. Few of the comments. Virtual meetings make it easy to get a large group together and be flexible with timing. A publisher commented that, as we talked about, this hybrid scenario with some in office and others remote is rather a mess due to the technology limitations. Maybe we'll figure out a way to get around that. I'm not sure. The agency said, I would really like to see the in-person meetings ramp up, and suggested that maybe they can have in-person meetings except during busy travel season. Busy planning season. Maybe that's when they go virtual. Another publisher said that they see in the future it's going to be mixed. A few in-person, but the majority virtual. So big takeaway. I think probably we'd come to this realization by now in October. I think it was more of a question is, are virtual meetings here to stay? Yeah, they're here to stay. But in-person will still have a place. Okay, budgets. We took a look and asked people how they did in 2021, how they think they're going to do in 2022, and in general, what the future holds as far as advertising spending and advertising budgets and revenue. So when we asked people how they did in 2021, 10 out of the 15 publisher participants said they fell short. So one publisher said they did meet expectations, 4 exceeded, but 2/3 of them said they fell short in 2021 from what they expected to do. But on the other hand, we had 5 agencies participating, and they all said that their spending either met or exceeded their expectations. Think about that one. So for both publishers and agencies, when looking towards 2022, a little more than half expect some increase for 2022. 5 expect the same as 2021, and 4 expect a further decrease next year. So as far as the comments went, obviously there was a disconnect between the publishers' missed expectations with regard to last year's revenue and agencies' met expectations. Here's what we don't know. Is this because publishers are too optimistic in their forecasting? Or are agencies better at forecasting? Or are agencies actually spending their budgets elsewhere? So they did spend what they said they were going to spend. It's just publishers didn't get that. We don't know. It's really unclear from this. I'd love to dig more into that, maybe with another survey. Now, agencies do cite their evolving tactics, which kind of leads to them spending their money elsewhere. For the future, they're talking about non-endemic platforms being included more and more. So that's something that we'll have to be aware of. I will say, however, product pipeline and other kind of specialty specific factors are primary. Both agencies and publishers talked about the pipeline. They talked about new product launches, and especially when forecasting in the short term, that's the thing that's having the biggest impact. And at this time, COVID was still largely on the radar as far as things that might impact this current year, 2022. Live meetings were still in question, pharma sales forces, what their ability will be to make calls. And of course, all those things impact spending on advertising and sponsorships. So that was still a concern. Few of the comments, an agency, here's what we talked about. It's all about launches and sales reps. Those factors make the biggest impact on our budgets. A publisher said, I thought this was cute, more new product releases might help. Once again, we need that pipeline. Now, this is where one agency said, I anticipate more omni-channel approaches, including CTV and non-endemic marketplaces. This was more a future. I don't think this agency was speaking in terms of 2022, but things to look out for in the future, and it may be 2022. That was the future at the time this was done, but they're spending their money on things that don't necessarily involve classic AMM publishers. Another publisher kind of agreed that spending on any given campaign will continue to decline as our clients seek more and more micro-targeted audiences. So the primary takeaway here is revenue and budgets. I think we know this. They're largely impacted by things that publishers and agencies don't necessarily control directly, which is product launches, list matches, how many match to the list, and also evolving tactics that don't necessarily include traditional medical journal media. But publishers evolving their offerings can help. I think we saw in that previous survey that publishers that are all able to do programmatic and offer more omni-channel within their offerings and have more omni-channel offerings to offer will be helped. But mostly it's still that pipeline, and it's still about list matches, and that's going to be the biggest impact. Okay, this was our last survey that we did before this presentation. This is our most current. A lot of you haven't seen this yet, but we looked at digital fraud. So in the hand raise section, 13 out of the 14 publishers said they're at least somewhat concerned that digital ad fraud might be taking dollars from them. Some said they're very concerned, but it was mostly somewhat concerned. Hang on. Trying to stop this thing. Go away. All right. So then sorry for the interruption there. 4 out of the 4 agencies that participated in this discussion said they're somewhat concerned too that fraud could be taking dollars that they could spend elsewhere. This is where it kind of gets interesting. Half of the publishers of the 14 we talked about have noted actual suspicious activity on their websites that they kind of made them wonder what was going on there. And 4 of these participants have confirmed actual fraud going on. Only 1 of the 4 agencies, however, said they'd noticed any suspicious activity in their performance metrics. That agency also did confirm fraud. So here's what the comments revealed when we take a look at it. Domain spoofing of top medical journals is happening. So medical journals that don't sell on exchanges are still showing up for sale on the open exchanges by name. So that's been confirmed. It is happening. Many publishers have also seen suspicious activity on their websites. Like, I think we all look at irregular spikes in invalid traffic. It's like, what's that coming from? It spiked and it went back down. Some have noted really huge increases in traffic that were temporary. It's a lot harder to determine exactly what's causing these things. And when you do just try to eliminate it, it's a bit like a game of whack-a-mole. So there's no real, people block invalid traffic. So that's easy to do. But when you see a strange spike and it's not somebody you've blocked before, it's kind of hard to know where that's coming from. Agency media participants were the 4 of them. They said they're also concerned about fraud, but detecting fraud seems to be elusive unless it's the fraud that's directly perpetrated by the publisher. I think we heard a little bit about this last month with Dr. Fu's presentation. It's really hard to tell if there's fraud happening. The fraud detection companies aren't catching it. So agencies aren't seeing that much of it unless it's the publisher that did it. And the publisher may have owned up to it. The biggest concern, of course, is in programmatic advertising on the open exchange. That's the greatest concern for publishers. Some of the publishers said they're kind of reassured that open exchange buying might not be happening that much in professional medical media. So they're not that worried that it's going to be a huge concern. But other publishers, particularly those, I guess, who have been defrauded and seen their fake sites show up, they're worried that agencies are trying to reach their doctors that way, and they're diverting dollars away from premium publishers to fraud. So these publishers assume that there must be some demand for medical journal ads on the open exchange if fraudsters are taking the time to spoof their domains. So couple of comments. We've never sold any inventory on an exchange. This is one publisher said, but our site showed up on an exchange as having a crazy amount of inventory for sale. It was at least 10 times more inventory than our site even produces. That's scary. This agency said we found click fraud by a publisher in one case. Another publisher admitted that they had bought traffic for their site. So that's the kind of stuff agencies are able to find. A consultant said they're selling ads that pretend to be on our sites. The ads never went on our sites. We just saw that with the first comment. One of the agencies said even a small handful of instances of fraud will throw doubt on the industry as a whole. I think we can all agree on that. So those are all the reports. So if you have forgotten how to find or have never known where to find all these reports on the exchange, if you look in the Acknowledge Exchange and you use the drop-down menu to the last item, they're all in the AMM Conversations Special Reports. So if any of these made you curious to read or reread some of these things, I encourage you to read through all the comments because people don't necessarily agree.
And I just made an offer in the chat. If anybody wants them all, I will throw them in a zip file and get them over to you. Just send me an email and I'll send you a step. Use help@ammonline.org and we'll get them to you quickly. Yeah.
Oh,
At least we can do to say thanks for coming.
Absolutely. Now I know we are almost out of time, but I don't know if we have any burning.
You have at least one question here.
Okay, let's hear it.
Do agencies expect to have to expand their plans to incorporate more brands and media based on first-party data compared to third-party?
Okay, say that one more time. Read it slow.
I'm going to read it slow and you're going to read the chat at the same time.
Okay, I'm going in there.
Do agencies expect to have to expand their plans to incorporate more brands and / media based on first-party data compared to third-party?
You know, that is a really good question, Lori. I don't think anybody specifically commented on that. We didn't specifically ask the question. It seemed mostly like agencies really just thought that first-party data is going to replace third-party data, or publishers are going to find another way to target that doesn't include third-party cookies. So I'm not sure the answer to that, but it's a really good question.
If anybody else has a question, we certainly have a moment. Otherwise, we'll
So
say
I
thank
have a question. Maybe somebody
Yeah.
has one here. Is what other topics do people feel the need to either comment on or hear what other people are commenting on? And if you have an answer now, if you raise your hand, otherwise, actually on that last slide, I could go back to it, but they'll be posted, is my email address. Actually, I can type it here.
Stephanie's going to put it there. You can always reach her too, or reach all of us with these ideas
Yes.
at help@ammonline.org. We'll make sure it gets to the right place.
Right, because we have covered a lot, or maybe most of the burning questions that I've been hearing through the years that publishers and agencies sometimes want to know about. But what else is out there? And it's not just what do you want to know, but what do you feel a burning compulsion to comment on? What do you have an opinion on? What do you wish other people would consider when they're making their decisions, that you would like to get into the conversation and get people to think about? So that's one of the primary, I think, benefits of this is it gives everyone a voice, so that we can contribute to the conversation and not just react to the conversation, because most of the people on this call and most of the people involved in AMM really are key opinion leaders. So we want to know what you think.
So there we have it. Stephanie, thank you for the time. Thank you for
Thank
the
you,
insights.
everybody.
Thank you for putting a year's worth of projects into 1 hour for an overview. Truly
a lot.
grateful. This tape will be available and out in the next day or so. So if please, this is a great one. If you know someone who would benefit, share the tape. Please pass the
Todd,
video along.
will you also be posting the slides, or if anybody wants the slides,
I will
them?
share everything and
Okay.
anything.
I'll send you the slides.
Send me
and
the
if
slides.
people
We'll
don't
get the
wanna-
slides up. I will send this video out to everyone. If you would like all the reports and save yourself a chance to need to step on the site, just drop me a line and I will take care of it for you. Nice to see everybody. Hope to see you in New York on May 4th, Boston on May 5th, and then for Illuminations in June. Talk soon.
Happy spring. Stay healthy.
All right, bye.